Hello YouTube, how's it going? So finally Horizon Forbidden West got its DLC, The Burning Shores, and this will contain spoilers as I discuss my opinions on it. I'm a huge Horizon fan, and just like with the Frozen Wilds, unless you are a fan of the franchise, there is no way you're going to play this. It's like with the Frozen Wilds, it's more of what the original game set in motion. Unfortunately, it also suffers from the same problems that I think that the franchise as a whole has been suffering from. Either way, again, this will contain spoilers for the entire thing, so if you don't want that, click off this video. Okay, so Horizon Forbidden West, The Burning Shores takes place technically after the core campaign. You don't need to beat the core campaign, but it's highly recommended that you do that before you dive into the DLC similar to the Frozen Wilds. You'll just get a better experience because it's clear that this was meant for the aftermath of everything that transpired. Long story short, the story involves you hunting down the remaining survivor of Far Zenith. There's one person who survived. Silence becomes aware of this and sends you to LA in search of him because he went back to his old hunting ground essentially in order to recoup ancient technology that he can use for whatever plan he's about to take part in. It's basically a hit. You're Agent 47 and you're going to kill this guy because all the Far Zenith people are evil. This one is named Walter, and he was an aerospace engineer responsible for basically mining asteroids using rocket technology. He was also a celebrity, and he married a very wealthy and well-known celebrity as well, which will play into his narrative. To me, this was a missed opportunity. They could have had an opportunity to make this Far Zenith actually not a bad guy because they painted them as just generic bad people. You know, rich tycoons. They were pioneers in their industry, and they were just all evil. There was exceptions. The only one we hear about is Chen, who basically amassed his fortune through Las Vegas. He gambled and gained a second chance at life. He then gave back a lot of the money to Las Vegas, making the city a lot more better for both the residents and for everyone there. In fact, it was because of him that the entire system in Las Vegas still operates to this day. Unfortunately, he died in the initial destruction of Far Zenith's homeworld. Either way, we're there to hunt them down. So right when we get to LA, we're immediately shot down by Walter's new defense towers, which he utilizes in order to keep his sections of the map completely isolated from only the people he has indoctrinated and the machines he's override along with his specters. Quickly, we find a new resident. Basically, this is the surviving half of Ava's settlement. We learned through the main campaign that they got split off and the other half believes they're dead, and in here we see that the Queen also believes that they're dead. So we encounter a brand new ally here. So the brand new person we encounter, her name is Seika. And while I do like the character, basically she's just a carbon copy. She's just carbon copy of Aloy. They literally just hit Control C, Control V, and said, "What if Aloy was part of the Quinn?" It's similar to a Kree from the Frozen Wilds. Aloy has this huge ego to her where she is infatuated with people who've gone through what she is or is exactly like her. In fact, the developers play on this because during one of the final missions, there's this big cinematic with her and Seika going off to fight the final boss, and it's basically just her and Seika doing the same exact animation to the point they're like, yeah, they're the same person, and it's such a huge missed opportunity. Like, yeah, Aloy has had, romantic advances from Erend, from the Sun King, from a Kree, but the difference is that she's only been infatuated with people who resemble her, who are like, they have to meet this criteria. They have to be outcast, they have to know what's best for their tribe, and they have to be willing to do what's necessary, even if it means everyone else ostracizes them. Again, it's literally a carbon copy of Aloy, and it's just so generic that I don't like. They've done this really poor system of writing romances. It's the same thing with Varl and Zoe. Varl and Zoe were just, hammered in as a romance couple right from the beginning. Right when you meet Zoe, it's just established that her and Varl are in a romantic relationship. I get it that they're trying to show that Varl was like doing his own thing and eventually established, some sort of connection with Plain Song and its people, but at the same time, it's never really fleshed out or really established why they love each other. They just say, oh, they're introducing me to new things and yada. It's just never really it doesn't feel real. It's just more like it's just hammered in, and the game franchise tends to do that a lot. I mean, in a way, the Sun King actually was more believable with his romantic advances towards Aloy. The Sun King's romance towards Aloy made a little more sense. He was trying to replace his lost love, which was Aaron's sister Ursa, who was killed during the events of Zero Dawn. So he saw a lot of Aloy resembling that of Ursa, and because of that, he tried to replace her. It's very much made apparent, and it's kind of clear even in Forbidden West. But even so, it's just that they're basically showcasing Aloy to be this character who's only infatuated with people who are exactly like her. Like, they literally have to meet this certain criteria of being an outcast and everything. And I just don't feel like it's a fit for Aloy. Like, you can make the argument that it's literally just, a flashed romance. Aloy is still very young, and it's just, she sees someone that she's really attracted to, which happens to just be her in a different situation. I don't know. I just felt like the romance wasn't earned. It also doesn't help that it's really rushed. Like, if you think Zoe and Varl's romance is rushed, here it's even more quick. Like, literally, like, I would say within the span of a day, within game time, they're in love. Like, it's just like, why do you two like each other so much? What is the connection here? They try again. It's such a mirrored comparison that literally they have sisters, literally the same type of sisters. Both of them are like, both of their sisters are similar to one another. Beta and Seika's sister are bothly the same, and it's just like, they just don't know how to write romances. I really think that Guerrilla Games should get someone who knows a thing about relationships and how to write them for their next game, because it's just so forced and unbelievable. Now, in terms of the core story of Usopp and Walter, it's basically your generic bad guy story. The guy literally just wants to leave the planet before Nemesis gets here, and he has a god complex. Basically, he's starting to imprison the Quinn in order to create his own, like, tribal mentality, where he's trying to replicate his inner circle back on before the Faro plague. So he's starting to reignite this type of mind control program where he's just enslaving Quinn to be infatuated with him. Unfortunately, there are side effects. The program was shut down because it wasn't perfected. So a lot of the people you fight are basically test subjects who become these types of enraged psychopaths who just kill on his behalf. They're just infatuated and oversaturated with rage, anger. They can't control their emotions. So they just essentially worship Walter as a god and start attacking, which also plays into the Quinn's mentality. You learn from Ava that they see as the people who were from Far Zenith as gods because they have very antiquated information, whereas Aloy had access to Elisabet Sobeck's information guides and basically knew who Ted Faro and all these people were. They're under the impression of what the public knew about them. They never knew about Ted Faro and his Pharaoh plague and all the insidious things he did, and Far Zenith in general. It wasn't public knowledge. It was literally only reserved for the most elite of people, and they're the ones who kind of foot the bill for Zero Dawn, so they kept it secret. So it also plays into that where he uses that to his advantage. And even though Walter is kind of a generic bad guy, there's a lot of just, you can tell that the story was really much rushed in order for plot convenience, because one of the number one things is that he has the same armor and design as like everyone else. And there's this one scene where Aloy and Seika literally go to Walter right in front of him as he's trying to basically manipulate a woman into being his wife because they resemble his lost love. He was married, she eventually left him for someone else, and then that guy left her. It's actually pretty sad. The woman's story is kind of put into a sideline, and you only learn what happened about her later on if you decide to go for the optional content. But long story short, he was married, he loved this woman a lot, tried to shower her with wealth. Eventually, she pushed away and went with this type of macho, very Hemingway guy who eventually left her in order to fight the Pharaoh plague, believing that's the only way he wanted to die, and she eventually just died alone in a kind of drug-induced coma because she'd rather die that way than all of this. Either way, the guy just never got over being in love with that woman, and I can understand that, but he also tries to basically imprint that onto someone else, and it's really twisted stuff. But again, it's nothing truly exciting because you don't really interact with Walter that much because he is also a dumbass, because there is a scene where he literally has the Far Zenith armor, which is impervious to everything, Aloy's right in front of him, and instead of just, blasting and killing her because he has advanced weaponry and everything, he just leaves her while she fights an apex, one of the apex Spinosaurus. And you can make the argument that he just left to, engage in his rest of his plan because he didn't see her as a threat, despite the fact that she was responsible for killing everyone in Far Zenith with the help of her allies. It just makes no sense. It's literally, she's right there. Just shoot her. She can be dead. I know it sounds like I don't want Aloy to die. She has a lot of luck and plot armor protecting her, but I feel like the writers just wrote themselves in the corner. Like, it just happens so much within the narrative, not only with the romantic option, which they just literally bullet through and force it on the player because they don't really flesh it out or establish it to the point that they actually make that connection. And Seika is just basically Aloy. It's the same thing with Walter. Like, he just acts like an idiot most of the time and doesn't really execute anything very well. Like, why don't you just have everyone just go after Aloy and all this stuff? Ultimately, the story just ends. I will say that the gameplay is still very solid. Like, they do add a bunch of new gameplay elements. I'll get more to that, but the narrative really falls short because it's clear that they just want to rush through things. And by the end, it's literally just to set up the events of the third game that's eventually going to come out. Whereas the Frozen Wilds did the same thing, I would say the Frozen Wilds actually did it a little more effectively because it kind of fleshed out not only Zero Dawn, but Horizon as an entire franchise. It showed you why Festus went crazy, what's going on with the robots, and you see more regions of the world that are being affected. Like, it's not just your own section of the world. Everyone is facing these types of threats, and they all have their own interpretation of how they try to fix them and how they, execute this stuff. Similar to Forbidden West, but here you just get more of the Quinn, and the Quinn are also downplayed a lot. Like, they're not fanatics like Ava kind of conveyed them to be, or how they were shown within that small knit community. They're actually pretty reasonable. Yeah, you have some few bad actors, but the leader is very much a civil and understanding person. In fact, you come in, and despite everyone calling you a barbarian and everything, you're never really treated as one. You're literally able to freely go and come as you want. Granted, Aloy does gain their trust almost immediately, but nevertheless, you never really feel like an outsider. Like, they let you come and go, they trade with you, they do whatever they want with you. Again, they're in a critical state and they can't really refute help, but at the same time, it just feels like they're not anyone special. Like, they could have gone so much more with this stuff. It's an expansion, and I understand they have some liberties they have to take, but for the most part, the story just really much falls short, establishing that romance option with Aloy, the main villain, and eventually it just leads up to a lukewarm conclusion where you just setting up the finale of the game, where you're basically going to have to hunt down ancient technology, which was kind of where Forbidden West left off anyway. So not really sure where they were going with this when it came to the overall context, because we just got a small amount of detail for something that we already knew what's going to happen. Now, I haven't talked much about Seika's entire involvement. She is your primary ally throughout the DLC, and the reason is she's trying to save her sister and her people. Her sister has been taken by Walter to be part of his cult, and at the same time, her people are essentially stranded and need some way to destroy the towers so they can get off this entire area. But ultimately, it's never really conveyed correctly that Seika's at the crutch of being exiled. Like, you hear off screen that apparently her people are trying to exile her for all her disobedience and everything, when in reality, it doesn't seem that way at all. Like, unlike in Zero Dawn with the Nora tribe, where they were verbally stating why they were against Aloy being an outcast and their traditions, here it's kind of the opposite. In fact, Seika honors her people's traditions, and she does really much care for them. In fact, the leader, as I stated, is a very reasonable person. He is extremely trusting. He's shown to take fact above everything else. In fact, there is a side mission where you have to go against one of his key advisors, and you uncover this type of misguided assassination, covert operations plot. And then guess what he does? He literally sides with Aloy because she has the evidence to back up her claims. And he's never shown to be against Seika in any way. In fact, he's shown to be on her side to help his people, which is what he's trying to do, to help his people get out of this very difficult situation. So it's never done correctly to showcase that Seika is literally, like, I don't even know if she's an outcast. They say she is, but she can come and go from the camp as she pleases. There are people there willing to help her. It's again, mixed messages all throughout, not only with the romance and the conveying of the narrative, but everything that's transpired. In fact, Ava's entire story was actually a lot more gripping when you saw the Quinn there, because they were being led by an unstable person who literally thought he was the reincarnation of Ted Faro. Like, he thought himself as a diviner and all this stuff. So it's actually shown to be very corrupt there. But here it's shown to be a very stable community with people in leadership, at least for the most part, that want what's best for their people. It's literally not shown that they're in any type of danger when it comes to anything whatsoever. There's nothing to showcase this. And ultimately, Seika just falls short with everything she stayed in, because you never really see that she's literally in any danger of losing her people or anything. Yeah, there is the cult and her kind of like trying to save her people because she has to kill them in order to survive, seeing that they're attacking her. But again, it just goes like that. Literally, they just turn a dial, which I understand. Aloy will kill if someone, even if it's a Nora, she will kill them if they try and kill her, which is to me, a very healthy outlook. If someone's trying to kill you, it's either you or them, and she really tries her best to be on Seika's side. Either way, it's just the chemistry between Aloy and Seika just, it falls short because it just seems so forced. The narrative just seems that it doesn't have the same level of weight that it should have, because it's never really conveyed correctly. And when we get to the end part of the game, this is where it just really falls apart, because despite the game trying to generate this type of very forced companionship between Seika and Aloy, because they're basically the same person, you literally have one of three options to choose from. You can accept the romance, choose to just be friends because you don't have time to be in romantic options, or three, saying, going back to default Aloy from Forbidden West, where she just basically isolates herself from everyone and say that she's the only one who can change the world and help everyone, which goes against what Forbidden West was trying to convey about Aloy allowing her companions to help her, because she doesn't have to take on this responsibility alone. That was the whole point that Varl was trying to push onto her, stating that everyone has a stake in this. The world is going to be destroyed. They live here. They want to help, and you're not letting us. And here it comes off as that. Then again, that's been an issue for Horizon since the beginning. Like in Zero Dawn, no one really knew where Aloy's personality would lie, because sometimes she would be compassionate, but then the player can be completely heartless and reckless in another situation because of those dialogue options. I think the middle ground would be like to have Aloy have a set personality. Like, let her be either very good, be a hard ass, or be like indifferent, or, you know, and just include optional dialogue. Like, basically have the optional dialogue wheels if you want to expand on certain things, or if the player chooses they don't want to care about that stuff and just want to go back to fighting machines, let them do that. But here, like, despite the fact the story just try so hard to establish the romance, only for you to basically have the option to shut it down completely, like literally come out of nowhere. When you're about to go to see Seika, literally Aloy is so like nervous and sweating. She's like, oh, it's just another encounter. I don't care. It's literally just a girl fawning over her crush, or a guy. It's like a guy or a girl fawning over their crush about to talk to them. And the fact that you go to them and you can literally just say, no, screw you, I have more important things to do, just comes off as just it just comes off as bad writing. So overall, I would say the story is basically, it's just there. It's just there to basically flesh out what we already knew from Forbidden West of what the next game is going to be about, and doesn't really add anything substantial. It's basically you just going on a hit mission, killing the last target that you have to, and then going off to find some little sliver piece of information. I think the biggest revelation would be that Silence, like with Silence, even though he's only at the beginning and the end of the game, he actually has the biggest character growth. Literally at the final scene, he thanks Aloy. He literally starts to open up and showcase that he does appreciate Aloy as a person, not as an asset, because since Zero Dawn, he's only seen her as an asset, like it's something to further his own needs. But here, he's starting to open up. He's starting to be like, I actually see you as a friend. And I know this comes like it sucks that Lance Reddick is gone, and this is probably going to be his last performance, at least from what we see now. But uh, it's kind of a high note for Silence. Like, he actually is the one who steals the show, I would argue. And yeah, also there are some optional characters that come into the mix. Like a certain Asaram that we met in Frozen Wilds, who also gets really good character development. Let's just say it's a side mission that you won't notice unless you do 100% of the content. I'll get more to that in the gameplay, but he actually has a lot more character growth than any new character you meet here. And it's really ironic that the character that only people who've actually done optional content in the Frozen Wilds and here gets the best character development in terms of becoming more of a person. So that's it about the story. If I were to give the story a rating, I would give it like a C or like maybe a 60. Like, it's slightly above average because I'm such a Horizon fan. But if you're not, I can see this dipping between a 50 and a 5 and a 4, or even like a D minus or something. But let's talk about gameplay. Now, the gameplay hasn't changed much. It's basically the same. You do gain new abilities with each of the trees, and they are pretty fun to use. Like, the biggest one to me that's the most effective is the grapple strike. Basically, if you stun a machine, you can grapple onto them and do a very powerful strike through a quick time event, which is really well done. I think it's a great way, and it's super overpowered. You can literally use this to demolish New Game Plus ultra hard mode if you want to. You get some seriously very powerful gear from the Quinn camp. Like, they do have this new type of resource called Brimstone, which is basically like the green stone from Forbidden West. You get this item in combination with shards, and you can buy very exotic equipment. And the weapons are super overpowered. They will literally destroy almost anything. And you do get your optional missions. The newest one is these aerial missions, which basically showcase a lost log of a soldier who essentially found out about Zero Dawn and then eventually learned that it was best and no one knew about it. You have some optional missions like relic runes. You have a couple of those. And you have some, optional missions as well. You also have some delvers that you have to find. Ultimately, it is a lot of pretty good, interesting content. The best one is when you fight an Apex Storm Eagle, where literally it's in this type of thundercloud, and you have to go up into the air, and then it literally shoots you down, and you fight in this epic fight. Like, this fight was so freaking amazing. I really hope that they expand on this and add like literal aerial combat and stuff, because that seems like where they're going to hint at. The boss fights are really good in this game, and you finally do get to fight a Horus, which is basically as epic as you might think. You do get some new machines to fight as well. The newest one is a toad machine that literally can spawn like flies that are basically easy to kill. The toad isn't that hard to kill. You just aim for its lower jaw and you can cause it to explode. You do get a new variation of the Sunwing. This one's called the Water Wing, which can dive underwater, which is pretty damn cool. Unfortunately, you can't use this in the Forbidden West. It's only exclusive to the LA area, but damn, is it cool. I really hope they add underwater mounts. Like, you can maybe one day ride a shark that might, maybe one day have a shark, or maybe the Tide Ripper. You can literally ride that. But the underwater sections, they're very limited, but they aren't that great. There are some new maneuver options where you can literally use a ballista to put notches onto the wall in order to climb. It's pretty cool. It's a new mechanic. It's clear that the developers are showcasing what the future of this franchise is going to have, and it definitely highlights the hinted multiplayer function that Horizon will likely have. I mean, it's not even hinted. It's literally been showcased in the alpha gameplay that was kind of leaked. But you can see, like, they're really focusing on how this game will be implemented as a multiplayer game. And I can see that with the Ballista, when you put notches on the walls of cliff in order to navigate your allies. And yeah, a lot of the game is basically the same with some new changes. You do get a new cauldron that you can go through, and they add this new mechanic where you basically use chill water, which is just regular water, onto hot surfaces so you can fly up in the air. It's rarely used. It's just used for very specific puzzles. Again, it's clear that they're experimenting with a lot of stuff in this game for the future installment. Um, Overall, the gameplay is solid. Nothing really special about it. LA as a whole basically is just more of the area where you discover the Quinn. If you remember Alva's area with the Quinn area when you learned about the metal flowers and the meter, that's basically what LA is. It's just more of that. It's still very well done. It's still beautiful and amazing to look at. I'm not really sure why they couldn't release this on PlayStation 4. It just doesn't seem like there's anything here, at least from what I can tell. Actually, let me scratch that. I think the real problem was the Horus. I think that's where they drew the line, because the Horus fight is basically this long-winded, incredibly detailed boss fight where you literally see the Horus in the background and everything transpiring behind you as you fight this gigantic thing. I think that's what did it. I think really genuine. Other than that, everything else could possibly work on a PlayStation 4, but I think that's really what nailed it. It's also there where they kind of just really established that Seiko is just Aloy. Literally, she rides one of the water wings, which is again like the sun wing, and she instantly gets it. Like she's perfect in every way. And I don't know, like the gameplay is still solid. If you liked Forbidden West's gameplay, you're gonna like more of that. It's really well done here, and I literally have no issue with it because it was so much fun for me in the beginning. But it also comes with a lot of issues that still are prevalent, like Aloy being knocked down by almost every attack. It's still annoying, and you still have to be very perfect with your dodges because you'll get knocked down like 90% of the time with almost every attack. Still annoying, but something you just have to adapt with. Aloy is still like a 20-something-year-old adult who's getting hit by giant machines in the shape of legendary creatures. They do add a new arena, so you can go back to the arena and just fight the new creatures that you fought in the Burning Shores, but they don't reward you with anything because they're just more medals. And if you've already done all the other challenges, you already have enough medals to get everything within the challenge shop, so there's really no point to it. I guess it's just there for additional content. And I guess the biggest the biggest advantage this DLC will have, that if you haven't beaten New Game Plus on ultra hard difficulty, this will actually be very huge for you because it will actually make the game a lot easier with everything that it gives you. Overall, I was happy with the DLC. Yes, it didn't really add much. I'm not a fan of Seiko because, she's just Aloy in the Quinn world, and I hope that they do flesh out this character a little more. They bring her back for the third game, and they actually have some conflict between the two, where they kind of, expand on the personality and just not make her a carbon copy of just Aloy and actually have her be more of her own person. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's kind of how I saw it. I would love the relationship to, cultivate and grow even more, because it definitely does add a lot more weight and more risk to it when you have a romantic partner involved in your situation. Like in Mass Effect, when you leave and you basically tell your team to go into Normandy, whatever your romantic option is, that's really a heartbreaking scene, particularly Tally's scene, which is absolutely just heartbreaking when you see that. So I think that would actually be really well done. Just, make Seiko a little more of her own character, give her some distinct personality and make her feel like she's not just Aloy in a different skin. So that's my opinion on the Burning Shores. I think it's still a really good DLC if you're a fan of Horizon like I am. But, you don't need to buy day one. You literally can wait for this at a sales. It's disappointing that PS4 fans can't get their hands on this. You have to get it on PS5 or when this comes out on PC eventually. Either way, tell me what you think. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it. I'll see you all later. Goodbye.